The Green Bay Packers are having a veteran wide receiver in for a workout this morning. Veteran wide receiver Keke Coutee is working out for the Packers today per source. He's also a punt return option, versatility that could help Green Bay after Randall Cobb's departure. So firstly, wanted to go over Keke Coutee a little bit to give you kind of an insight what he could bring to the Green Bay Packers. Of course, this is just a workout, so the Packers haven't officially signed him, but he certainly could offer some things like punt return, like it said in that tweet there, as well as some versatility at wide receiver. Keke Coutee was in the 2018 NFL Draft, drafted in the 4th round to the Houston Texans from Texas Tech. He's a 5'11", 180-pound wide receiver that runs a 4.43. Now, the tweet says veteran, and yeah, I guess you could consider him that because he's played 5 seasons in the NFL, his first 3 with Houston, and his last 2 with Indianapolis, but he is still only 26 years old, which is actually pretty crazy. He came into the league very, very young, so I guess considering, yeah, he played 5 seasons in the NFL, he's a veteran by that sense, but in terms of his age, he definitely is not. So going over Coutee's stats, his 5 years in the NFL, his first year as a rookie in Houston, he had 28 receptions for 287 yards and 1 touchdown. Then in 2019, he had 22 receptions for 254 yards and 0 touchdowns. In 2020, he went for his best season with 33 receptions, 400 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Then in 2021, Coutee was waived by the Houston Texans, later signed to the Indianapolis Colts practice squad. Then he was promoted to the active roster. In 2021 and 2022, he only had 1 reception in both seasons. He was mainly used as a special teamer, which we'll go over here next. So Coutee was on the Colts practice squad all of 2021 and a couple months into 2022. He was signed to the active roster on October 15th in 2022, but then later released on December 13th in 2022 and then re-signed to their practice squad. So he's kind of jumping around the practice squad to active roster on the Indianapolis Colts, mainly on the practice squad for the last 2 seasons. Now, in the 8 games he played in 2022 for the Indianapolis Colts, he had 17 punt returns for 152 yards, a long of 19 yards, and an average of 8.9 yards per return. He didn't return any kicks for the Colts, but back in 2020, he did have 5 returns, kick returns for the Houston Texans, so he has some versatility there. He can punt return and kick return, but I think at this point in his career, he mainly would be a punt returner, and that's probably what the Packers are bringing him in as, so to have more competition at that punt return spot. Will they put Keyshawn Nixon at kick return and punt return? I'm not sure. I think he's 100% locked in as that kick return spot. I don't think there's any question there, but I'm not necessarily sure they want to play him at punt return and kick return, considering they might want to use him a little bit more on that defense in the nickel role. So I think right now they're probably trying to, weigh out who their punt return could be. It could be Jaden Reed, their 2nd round draft choice from Michigan State. He did return punts at Michigan State. It could be someone like Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, which I kind of doubt they go that route. Obviously, they don't have Randall Cobb on the roster anymore, so it's kind of smart to bring in someone like Keke Coutee. Yes, this is just a visit, but if they like what they see in terms of his special team ability, in terms of a punt return, they might sign him, for this offseason so he could at least, compete at punt return. And if he wins that job, it's going to be a heavy room at wide receiver. I think if he were to make the roster, he might be the 6th or 7th wide receiver and solely for special teams here. But that definitely could happen in terms of the Packers wanting a decent punt returner, which, we know our problems with punt return in the last couple of years. In terms of a wide receiver aspect, Coutee only has 1,000 yards in his 5-year career, so he hasn't really done that much at wide receiver. In terms of where he lines up on the field, if you wanted to kind of project to see maybe if he could compete at a certain position, he has played 73.7% of his snaps out of the slot. So this kind of makes sense too if the Packers were to bring in, a veteran wide receiver, I'll put in quotation marks there, probably would be a slot guy. Considering they really didn't draft a pure slot in the 2023 draft, I do believe Jaden Reed will mainly play slot, but I also think he will play some outside. He'll be their jet motion guy. Samora Toure could play some slot. Christian Watson can play some as big slot when they run their slot fade concepts, which we've seen in the past in his rookie season. So they have a lot of versatility in these wide receivers, but they don't really have a pure slot guy like they did with Randall Cobb. Now, I don't think the Packers necessarily need one going into the season. I don't believe it's going to be, Keke Coutee is a pure slot wide receiver, we're going to sign him just to do that, because I don't think even if he is signed, he's going to get snaps over any of these guys. I think Jaden Reed would get snaps over him. Dontavian Wicks, who, yes, is an outside guy. And I think Grant DeBose, honestly, has more chance at making the roster if Keke Coutee is signed to this 90-man roster. But nonetheless, this adds competition. And I like competition, especially for such a young wide receiver group. And that goes on past just wide receiver, like I said, with punt return, kick return, and special teams as a whole. Now, before the draft, Matt LaFleur was pretty adamant about adding a vet veteran wide receiver into this room, and I don't think this necessarily counts as that. I still think if they were to add a true veteran wide receiver, they might do that later in the offseason when they get a better grasp of this wide receiver room. I think this is solely just for competition at punt return and maybe slot. But after the draft, Matt LaFleur kind of changed up on that a bit, saying, I think time will tell, but it's certainly a very talented room. It's going to be a hell of a competition in terms of who's getting the snaps, because just at first glimpse at some of these young guys that just were in here, there are some talented guys. So they're going to be exciting to work with. I'm sure it's going to be a very fluid situation in terms of just how much we throw at them. And if need be, I know Goody is going to do whatever we can to help us field the best possible team. If need be, I think we could turn that way, but right now I think we're going to just let those guys compete. Basically saying he doesn't think they need to add a veteran wide receiver. So like I said, I don't think this is, again, it's just a visit, but even if they sign him, I don't think this is that quote unquote bringing in the veteran guy to that wide receiver room, because like I said, Keke Coutee is 26 years old and, has played 5 years at wide receiver, but mainly has been a special teamer and hasn't done that much at wide receiver on his own. So I still think it's going to be the main 6 guys the Packers have in that wide receiver room: Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Samori Toure, and Grant DuBose. Honestly, right now, those 6 are my 6 to make the roster, and I think the Packers would be completely okay with that. I think, Grant DuBose offers a lot of potential there. Probably wouldn't get a lot of snaps. His first year might be inactive a lot of the games. I think Dontavian Wicks is going to get more snaps than most 4th rounders do. Obviously, we saw Romeo Doubs get a lot of snaps last year as a 4th rounder, and I think Jaden Reed will be a day 1 starter in a 3 wide receiver set personnel. So if we have Christian Watson out there, Romeo Doubs, and Jaden Reed, I believe he will be the 3rd receiver out there. Maybe in some cases even the 2nd receiver over Romeo Doubs, depending on the packages the Packers want to run. I'm just super excited for this new wide receiver room. I feel like there's so much unknown, especially going into the season with Jordan Love at quarterback and the type of system the Packers are going to run. I'm super excited how this offense will shape out and what it will look like. I'm looking to do a few videos on all these wide receivers. I love breaking down wide receiver film. I did it last year with Watson, Doubs, and Toure. So this year I plan to do it with Reed, Wicks, and DuBose. If you want to see those videos, leave a like down below and also leave a comment if that's something you guys would be interested. Breaking down the film from their college tape and whatnot, and going over, what type of wide receiver and the game they have going into the pros. But we'll see if they sign Keke Coutee in the coming days. I would be okay with it just in terms of like competition at punt return, but anything outside of that, I feel like he's not going to really help much in terms of like a wide receiver, a pure wide receiver guy in terms of competition. But competition is competition. So if the Packers do decide to sign him, I'm okay with that as well. But that about does it for this video. If you are new here and want more Packers news, analysis, and updates, also with OTAs right around the corner, there'll be all OTA updates right on this channel. So if that does interest you, go down and click the subscribe button. Also leave a like on the video to show support to my channel. Just hit 38,000 subscribers. Appreciate every single one of you that watches my video every day. You guys mean the world to me. You allow me to do the thing that I love, and that's talk the Green Bay Packers. But I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching, and as always, go back up.